Tonight, we're diving into a story that is genuinely chilling. It's a true account from 1987 about a family whose dream of a new life in a new city turned into, well, an absolute nightmare. This is the story of their new home and the terrifying presence inside that refused to let them live in peace.
Now, those aren't my words. That's a direct quote from the person who sent this story in. He wanted to make one thing crystal clear before we even started. This isn't just some spooky campfire tale. This is an experience that left a family completely scarred, and it's a promise of what's to come.
You know, so many of these stories start out in the most ordinary way possible, and this one is no different. It all began with a simple, practical decision. The Majumdar family needed a place to live, a new beginning. But the room they picked, well, it came with a history they couldn't possibly have imagined.
All right, so let's set the scene. The year is 1987. A man named Ramesh Majumdar gets a job transfer with the railways, which is going to move him to Delhi. He decides, hey, this is the perfect time to bring my family together. So his wife and his two little boys, Sarthak, who's 4, and his brother, who's just 2, all pack up and move into what they hope will be their new family home.
So, why this room in particular? Well, the choice tells you everything you need to know about the father, Ramesh. He was a very practical man. The decision was pure logic. First, the rent was incredibly low. And second, his sister lived right on the next street over. I mean, on paper, it seemed like the perfect, most sensible arrangement you could ask for.
And here it is, the first big red flag. His own sister tried to warn him. The locals, they knew something was off about that place. It had a reputation. But for a practical guy like Ramesh, who's just focused on the budget and being close to family, well, those are just rumors, right? Superstitions. Easy to dismiss. So he ignored her.
For the first couple of days, everything seemed deceptively normal. Sarthak's mother, she felt this creeping sense of unease, but she just chalked it up to the stress of moving. It wasn't until her husband left for work that the real strangeness began to unfold.
So picture this. She's alone in the room with her 2 small children, and she's cooking dinner. The door is open to the corridor, but it's covered by a curtain for privacy. And just out of the corner of her eye, she sees a shadow move past the entrance. You know, like someone just walked right by. It's a simple, fleeting moment, but her heart just drops.
She immediately steps outside to see who it was, thinking maybe her husband came home early. But there's no one there. And here's the thing. That corridor only leads to 2 rooms, hers and another one that was always kept locked from the outside. So where did the shadow go? It's as if it just walked straight into a locked room and vanished. It made absolutely no sense.
Okay, the next day, the unease really starts to ramp up. She leaves her sons upstairs for just a moment, and her older son, Sarthak, comes screaming down the stairs, totally terrified. She runs back up to the room, and she finds her 2-year-old, the youngest, just sitting on the bed, staring at an empty spot in front of him and laughing. Just laughing his head off like someone was right there playing with him.
And the unsettling events just kept building. A few days later, she's taking a nap with her children, and she feels something. The blanket that's covering her is being gently, deliberately pulled off her body. She jolts awake, her heart pounding, but the corridor is empty. Again, she tries to convince herself, okay, it was just a dream. It had to be a dream. But then, things start happening that are physically impossible to explain away. That evening, while she's making dinner, she hears a loud, distinct knock on the window. She starts to get up to see who it is, but then she freezes. She suddenly remembers. They're on the 2nd floor. That window opens onto a sheer drop. There's no balcony, no ledge, no way for any person to be out there knocking.
And just as that horrifying realization sinks in, it gets so much worse. From that same impossible window, she hears a sound. But it's not a voice, it's not a word. It's a low growl. And the way it was described was that it was just full of pure, raw anger. The feeling of being watched has now turned into a feeling of being hated.
So this is the turning point, right? The creepy feelings and the strange sounds, that was one thing. But now whatever is in that room has become physically aggressive. The haunting is officially turning into an assault.
The mother turns her back for just a second, and suddenly 4-year-old Sarthak is thrown from the bed, and he cries out, not in fear, but in accusation, pointing at her. "Mom, you pushed me." This is a chilling new tactic. This thing isn't just violent. It's actively trying to tear the family apart from the inside.
As she's trying to comfort her terrified and confused son, she hears it. A woman's voice, clear as day, whispers right next to her ear. And the message isn't a suggestion, it's a direct threat. Get out of here, or I'll kill everyone. There is no more ambiguity. They are in mortal danger.
Now, all this time, the father, Ramesh, has been dismissing his wife's fears. Remember, he's the practical one, the skeptic. He thinks she's just being hysterical. But that is about to change. That night, he decides to stay in the room alone to write a letter, sitting at a small table right next to that impossible window.
He hears the knock again. He gets annoyed, thinking it's a thief, and he bangs on the window. But then he feels it, an intense, bone-chilling cold, and that awful feeling of being watched. He pulls back the curtain, and in that one moment, his skepticism completely shatters. Floating outside the second-story window is a girl with wide, terrifying eyes. She looks right at him and asks a question that echoes the threat his wife heard, confirming his absolute worst fears.
And that was it. That was the final straw. No more denial, no more trying to rationalize things away. The only goal now was to get out, to escape.
And just think about the timeline of this whole ordeal. The unease, the ghostly games, the physical attacks, the final terrifying confrontation, all of it happened in just 9 days. They went from a hopeful new home to an absolute nightmare in a little over a week.
So Ramesh confronts the landlord, right? He demands to leave immediately and to get his deposit back. But he's met with this bizarre, chilling offer. The landlord doesn't even deny that there's a problem. Instead, he suggests Ramesh should send his wife and kids away for a while and just stay with the landlord's family downstairs until things feel normal again. It's a quiet admission that he knows that room is not safe.
Now, safely at their aunt's house, the family finally learns the truth. The secret that the landlord, and probably the entire neighborhood, had been keeping this whole time.
And here it is, the tragic explanation for all the horror. The landlord's own 22-year-old daughter had taken her life in that very room after he refused to let her marry the man she loved. In their anger and shame, the parents didn't perform the proper last rites, trapping her restless, angry spirit there. And this wasn't the first time she had lashed out. A previous family who rented the room, their young son had died after falling from the roof, and just before he passed, he told his parents he hadn't fallen, he was pushed.
The Majumdar family, they were lucky. They got out. But their story really makes you wonder about the places we all live in, the rooms we rent, the homes we buy. We see fresh paint and new floors, but we never truly know the history that's held within the walls. It really leaves you with one final, unsettling question. If our walls could talk, how many of them would scream?